Hello everybody and welcome to Alternative Interactions. I'm Gary. Thank you for joining me. Please like, share and subscribe. And now we've got the corporate bit out of the way. Today I'm going to do something a little bit different, something I've never tried to do before, but was inspired to or asked the question in a chat with Maten from Plutonic Planes a week or so ago. And I'd done a Janus introductory show, and I talked through some of the pictures and some of the things that I was interested in and what I'd seen in them. And of course I keep saying, oh, this is the Fibonacci, this is the crystalline code, blah blah blah. But what does it really mean, and what does it actually look like? Now, some of us are very, very visual learners, and some of us want to see the difference between an old picture and the modern scientific take on something. And so what I've done is I've put a slideshow together that should actually show us this. Now, some of this slideshow, I've tried not to do it too in depth, but I want you to, the aim of this is for me to be able to show you old pictures, as in paintings from the painting from the 1500s, as well as alchemic symbolism, and show you the modern scientific explanation of what we're talking about, so you can see the difference. I'm also going to be looking at sacred geometry and how it's really not, and how it's all gone into this melting pot of the Fibonacci sequence, which is really not a good thing. And so it's very easy for me to just say all those words, but with no visuals it doesn't make a lot of sense. So I'm going to do the visuals. So with that, here we go. Let's hope the technical stuff works. There we go. Okay, so what we're looking at is Janus, the twin-headed god. This is a bust or a depiction of him from the Vatican Museum, I believe. Interesting, it's got number 17 on it, which is 1 and 7 is 8. But there we go. Janus is either male and male or male and female, so X and X and X or Y. And as I mentioned before in my depiction of Janus, is the god of gods, he's the father of gods, he's Pater or Peter. And we'll get onto all of these subjects later. I don't want to go too deep on this one because I'm aware of there's other subjects that I need to go into off this much deeper. So this is a picture from 1530 of Janus and Cronus on the left. They're actually here, the upper left. Now I'm not going to show this picture for too long because we have symbology which YouTube won't like. So I have used Metatron's cube to cover up this modesty, which is quite poetic in itself, because you'll see that as we get going. But what we fundamentally have here is Janus as the XY. So Janus is also Ionis, who is also Diana. So the goddess Diana is Janus, and in this sense this is what is portrayed. But we also have Kronos with the scythe, who is also the grim reaper, and we have a snake encircling the grim reaper. Now Janus holds the key. Here we see a key being held. We have an angel above here holding a round disc, which I shall get onto later. And this poor lady here is Gaia. Now I have a picture of this which is slightly clearer, and here we go, and this is the one that I'll be using throughout. So we have a little thing about this at the top, and it's in my opinion one of these things is wrong, and I'll point it out when we get there. So at the Getty is a fascinating 16th century drawing by Giulio Romano. Here is Janus. Janus is shown as Venus. Wrong. Janus is not Venus. Janus is Jupiter. I mean, Janus could be Venus, but Janus is Jupiter in Pisces, currently in this age. Jupiter, Peter, the father. And the pronouncing word of Jew is very prominent at this current time. So Jupiter, I believe, is Janus in this current incarnation, next to Kronos. Kronos is Janus as well, because Janus is the father of time and the keeper of time, of beginnings and endings, and originally Kronos would have been about births and deaths and planting the seed, as in harvest, and reaping the harvest. But Kronos is definitely Janus. Now Janus is described as a two-faced god or a four-faced god, and in this depiction here, this cherub is particularly important because this is Janus as well, because here we see Janus is all four faces, the XX and the XY, and this disc here that's been held is very interesting because that is the moon, in my opinion, and the snake around has got huge significance around Kronos time. And here we have Gaia holding the snake, a serpent still, but the serpent is open. It's not closed. And it's open for a significant reason, which we'll get into later. But these are the four faces of Janus, the four-faced god, as different deities and different people. And this is Gaia, Mother Earth, who is also the creational crystalline Kryst code. Not Christ, but Kryst code. Although you could use Christ if you wanted to, and you could use this as Christ consciousness, which is actually Kryst consciousness as far as I believe. So, but the winged victory hovers above, but the winged victory above is actually the moon and one of Janus's faces. And again, you only see one eye, you only see the one half of the face. Now, this is an alchemic picture or print from very early on. I would say mid 1500s again, if not earlier. I can't be certain, so please don't quote me on that. But we get a lot of these kind of images from around this period of time with the dress and such like. But I'm not particularly interested in any of what's going on. What I'm looking at is the snake. Now the snake is eating itself around Kronos. This is the snake eating itself. Although it's two snakes, the snake is still eating itself. And within the snake of time is Metatron's cube, the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pointed star. And here is Metatron's cube. below. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Sacred geometry, in fact. But the all-seeing eye sits in the middle of Metatron's cube, and the all-seeing eye would be Janus in this case. So within this imagery we have time, the circle, but we have it eating itself, and it's eating itself is very important. The snake is eating itself, very important, because inside here we have the circle, another circle, and Metatron's cube symbolism, and Metatron's cube symbolism. We also have a word here in Hebrew, and that word is very significant moving forward, and that's Yahweh. Another name for Janus. I'm not going to go any deeper into that one, and I may have triggered some of you just by mentioning that. I will be doing a deeper dive into this, because this is a rabbit hole all of its own self. The sun, and we have the Lucifer sigil here, and this sigil here over the moon, that is a representation of a demonic entity. But again, I don't want to decode this too much. We just want to look at the fact that the serpents are eating their own tails, and so feeding off themselves. So in actual fact, time will eventually collapse upon Metatron's cube, and that has more significance going into the future than you understand currently. So here we have another depiction of the serpents eating themselves with the all-seeing eye inside. Very interesting. But here we have the twin keys in the cross, which is the sigil of Janus, signifying that this is Janus's realm. And here we have a lady trapped inside a circle with twin serpents, and that's Gaia. Very interesting. But we get this in many, many different forms of serpents eating themselves within the all-seeing eye. So I have plenty of images like this. It's just, this is an example, so we can now start to see two keys, or a key is Janus, the twin faces of the key, with Gaia enslaved within the serpent that's eating itself upon time, that will collapse upon itself fundamentally. There's a lot to decode in this one as well, and I'm not going to do it today, but I think it gives you a good idea of where we are. Now we have the crystal lotus flower of life, or the Kryst code, Kryst, which is the universal eternal consciousness of open source. This is the creator element. This is your higher self. This is everything. We then have the Metatronic flower of death. It's fragmented and finite consciousness. It's a closed source system. So when we saw the serpent eating itself, the serpent was closed. We are looking at the Fibonacci sequence, or the Metatronic flower of death, which is your sacred geometry. And when we're looking at the universal consciousness, Christ consciousness, Kryst consciousness of Mother Gaia, we are looking at the crystal lotus flower of life. Very similar, but also very, very different. Now the reason why they are different, and we'll go into the mathematics of this as well, so you understand, is this is the Kryst code, and here we have a brown and a blue in parallel. And what this is the positive and negative charges within the crystal spiral sequence, which means it can grow and feed itself. It is consciousness, and so does not need to feed off anything to grow. So what we get is 1 and 1, 0, 1 and 1 is 2, 0, 1 and 1 is 4. So it's 2, 4, 8, 16, 32. It always doubles upon itself. The Fibonacci sequence is different. For it to get to 2, it had to feed upon itself. 1 plus 1 going back is 2. And to get to 3, it's 2 plus feeding upon itself once to get 3. To get 5, it's 2 plus 3, but it's had to feed upon itself. The snake is feeding upon itself to keep on growing. It does not have the positive and negative ions of creational energy. It only has itself to feed upon, and it vampires off the crystal spiral. So when we talk about the Fibonacci sequence and the crystal spiral or Kryst code spiral in life, we think about a snail shell or a nautilus shell or sacred geometry. Now, we can't actually see the difference in this because they're very similar. But here we have both of them together. In the red is the Fibonacci, and in the blue is the crystal, the Kryst code, consciousness, Christ consciousness, if you want to put it that way. Now, we can see that they look very, very similar to each other until they point axis 7, and 7 is a very key number. Very key number. And at axis 8, we have a proper split, and they never meet again, because the Fibonacci sequence will keep on going and going and going and going until it will collapse upon itself, as the Kryst code will keep on going up and up and up and growing. So when we're talking about enlightenment and the 3D realm, we're talking about the Fibonacci spiral, and we're talking about a 5D realm, we're talking about the crystal spiral, something that grows and is consciousness and is pure. The Fibonacci sequence is not. The yin and the yang, almost, the good and the bad. So here we have Victory with a lovely little ring, or his lovely little ring. Interestingly, Victory appears to be both male and female in this case. Now, when we look at this image here, not only do we get Metatron's cube with the all-seeing eye, which is exactly the same as the seed of life, we have 2 cherubs. Janus is often portrayed holding a key in one hand and a rod in another. These 2 cherubs represent Janus. This is Janus, the 4th face, because they're holding the key. But also what we get is a circle within a circle within a circle. We have a name there called Jesus, with a triangle pointing down, and we have a triangle pointing up. We have the serpent in open form. Although it's going around the tree, it's open. And this is Adam and Eve. These 2 circles, or these 3 circles, represent the seed of life, which is Metatron's cube. We have 1 circle here, 2 circles here, and 3 circles here, and this creates the daisy of death. This is the parasitical energy that enslaves us. And what do we have overseeing this parasitical energy? We have Janus, the 2-faced god, and Metatron's cube, ensuring that that energy is used. We are still talking about the snake that's eating itself fundamentally, but victory is, in this case, the round laurel could be the round representation of the moon, but we have the key and the staff of Janus within the two faces. So we carry on with this, the Metatronic side. This side here of the picture is Metatron's cube. It's the Metatronic symbol. It's the 10 Cathara grid that cannot grow upon itself, and this is the 10 Cathara grid as opposed to the 12 Cathara grid here. And this this can be changed to an angle and placed within itself and upon itself, and will always grow its growth. So it starts here and it can double because of the positive and negative ion, which I shall go into later in a little while. As Metatron's cube, which creates the flower of death, the daisy of death, is a 10 Cathara grid and cannot reproduce upon it and create. It can only crash and use, which is Metatron's cube. So this is a depiction of Metatron's cube, and this is the crystalline flower of life, the lotus of life. And so Gaia is this, and Janus is this. I hope that makes sense. So what we're seeing with, unfortunately I've cut that slide off, I do apologise, it's a circular and it shows the positive and negative and the flow which creates this crystal sequence. But this is Gaia we're talking about now on the 12 Cathara grid, which is creational. Now this here, and please do look at my videos going back because I have covered this, the Fibonacci sequence and the Kryst code, as well as other things like that. This is the waveform pattern of atomic material when not being viewed in a state of neither one thing or another, which is the creational energy of this realm which makes everything solid and seem real. And the pattern from the atomic material of creation, the building blocks of this realm, the waveform or the sequencing of this is exactly the same as the crystalline code, the Kryst code sequence when placed upon. The Fibonacci sequence when laid upon this does not match in any way, shape or form. It's completely different. This was one of the eureka moments I had a good month, 6 weeks ago perhaps, so please go back and look at this information. It's key to understanding sacred geometry and the Kryst code or source code of creation. We are talking about Mother Gaia here because the snake is open source. It's open source and it's creational because it's not eating its tail. It has potential to do anything, just like atomic material, just like the crystalline code. And here we go, the crystalline code. We have positive and negative ions in a 12 Cathara grid that allows the growth upon itself to create this shape, which is true sacred geometry, which is the creational Mother Gaia sequence, the source spiral. Gaia is source. It's the beginning of the source of the creational energy of this realm, and the atomic matter shows this, because this is an atomic structure: a proton, a neutron, an electron, positive atoms, negative atoms, creational. This is not Fibonacci. This is crystalline code power. This is Mother Nature. This is Gaia. This is source code. This is your higher self. This is the Creator's own energy. Consciousness. The consciousness of the toroidal field that creates this reality. The toroidal field in multiple shapes in a 3D way. Again, we can see this Fibonacci and crystalline code, how it splits. It's very important. Nature follows the crystalline code. I actually looked into Nautilus shell. The crystalline code spiral is 1.414, and a Nautilus shell is anything between 1.3 and 1.4. The Fibonacci sequence is 1.6, and is not the same as a Nautilus shell or any other kind of natural system. Now, this is the Vitruvian Man by Da Vinci. That's another one. But here we see that he was made using Fibonacci. And here we have the inverted triangles that we saw on the previous slide when we were looking at the Adam and Eve inside Metatron's cube that creates the Daisy of Death. And this is Metatron's cube in all its different guises. This was designed, in my opinion, to bring in Fibonacci sequence death control mechanism into the consciousness, and was pushed by the establishment as a control mechanism. And then taken up by the New Age movement in a very nefarious way. This is a dead end, and anybody using this kind of energy for spiritual work or otherwise is actually feeding Metatron's cube. And we'll go into Metatron's cube in a second. So again, the Fibonacci sequence feeds on itself. We can see the design as a spiral source code is creational. Here we have Janus, here we have Mother Gaia. And we have the satanic cult of the black cube. The six-pointed star with the cube inside. The 666, Metatron's cube. The cross is a cube opened up. We see the cube everywhere, from Masonic halls to around the world where cubes are done, and even they've made ground zero in New York into the black cube, created a black cube within the ground using this sequence. So this Janus here is the Saturn cult of the black cube, using Fibonacci sequence to latch on and leech off and feed off our louche. So when we use this energy thinking it's good, we're actually feeding a demonic entity that uses our faith and turns it around. The duality, the two faces. Sacred geometry, Metatron's cube, the tree of or flower of life, which is actually the daisy of death, the tree of life, which is a 10 Cathara grid. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That's 12. It's 10. It's shown as 10 when you put it over the daisy of death. It should be a 10. The Merkaba. The Merkaba. All sacred geometry shapes that use the Fibonacci sequence are Janus and Kronos, and they feed upon the energy and they are collapsing. They have no way of growing. They are parasitical. The parasitical side. Now I hope that made sense, and you can see that shows it better, that the 10 Cathara grid, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 within the days of death. So you can see that we have a real big problem with sacred geometry, the Metatronic cube, and the fact that I see Janus in this, because we have the circle of inside Kronos eating itself. But what we have on our side is the fact that Gaia is Christ consciousness, is the creational energy that we saw through the atomic structure, whoops, and the double slit experiment of the wave form that I have done videos on previously. This is a creational energy, a flow. And Gaia's back online because we're coming to the end of the Fibonacci sequence. Oops, sorry. Fibonacci sequence. So we're coming to the end of the Fibonacci sequence. We've met axis 7. We're now splitting off to the 5D consciousness, and the 3D consciousness will stay within the Fibonacci spiral, and they will see revelations and all that follows from that within the biblical text that was written in spells as parts of the control mechanism of the 3D Fibonacci spiral to entrap the mind and the souls for when we get the reset, the exodus. But those on the crystalline spiral of energy and frequency will get out of this, and we're going to literally walk out of this. Now, I've only touched, again, briefly touched what I'm talking about here. It goes so much deeper, so much deeper. It's unbelievable. I have hours and hours worth of presentations to do on this, to go much deeper and to show you all the things that I'm saying and prove what I'm saying. I'm in contact with some very, very clever people who are in the process of helping me with additional information on this so that I can nail this one properly and really, really show you guys that this is the daisy of death and our control mechanism, our shackle from where we should be. Right. Hello everyone. So hopefully that made sense. You probably need to go back and look at my Fibonacci v Kryst code video that I did some weeks back to show you the difference between the Fibonacci and the Kryst code at the atomic level of what we see within the creational holographic realm of the matrix which we're in, which is actually a toroidal field of consciousness. And again, I kind of cover this as well in my Flat Round or Neither series, the 3-part series that's really worth going back and looking at, because all of this is connected and interlinked. But let's take the positive from that. The split from the crystalline code to the Fibonacci sequence is happening, and it can't be stopped. And if you watched my Operation Looking Glass video, I can't remember what I called it now, it's done a while, but we've got this. The end is clear. The black cube organisation of control mechanism using Operation Looking Glass tried their hardest to effect a change of their control mechanism of stopping the split of consciousness, the raising of consciousness, and they couldn't do it, so they had to shut Operation Looking Glass down in 2012 because they could not effect the change that they needed to. And that's massive. That's massive. And when you start seeing it in numerical and pictorial ways, you can then start to see and understand, and you start looking at more and more images, the more and more you see within them, and the more it shows within them. A picture says 1,000 words, but it's understanding what that picture is trying to tell you to get that 1,000 words. So I hope I've shown you in kind of scientific ways the difference between the crystalline code and Gaia, and the Fibonacci sequence and Janus. The parasitical system which is trapped within the 3D realm. See, this is the other thing. Janus is trapped within the 3D realm. And for all of you who have seen The Matrix, he's Mr. Smith fundamentally. He's stuck inside. He can't get out. And that was what part of Operation Looking Glass was. They couldn't get out. They couldn't break or affect the change. So they then decided to take as many souls as they could with them into the 3D realm for the major reset that's coming in 2178 for the 3D realm only, not the 5D, for the 3D realm only. They will encounter what Jason of Archaics has spoken about within the Phoenix. And if you look back at those slides, you will see Phoenixes in there. Now, I didn't mention them this time because that's for a different and another explanation of what's going on. This is a multifaceted, multi-layered construct of understanding, and hopefully that slideshow gave you a brief glimpse of what I'm talking about when I say this is crystalline code, which is good, and this is Fibonacci or Metatron's cube, that's bad. So with that, thank you very much for watching. Please like, share and subscribe, and I hope I made it understandable so you could get your head around this very complex issue. It really is a very deep one, and it's one that will go and go and go, and I'll be doing multiple series on this in the future, but I want to get it right, and I want to make sure the information I give you is the most detailed and fundamentally full that I can produce. And remember, this control mechanism goes all the way back to what I did yesterday with the flint video, being electrical silica, and the way the realm has been done, the way they destroyed Tartaria, because Tartaria would have been crystalline, the Kryst code system, and Metatron's cube came along and destroyed that system. So we went from love, peace, harmony and breatharianism to a predator-prey situation again, where we get death and destruction, because at the end times it's the only way the Fibonacci sequence can maintain such large jumps in energy. It has to create the fear loosh, a bit like Monsters Inc. when the monsters scream, or the monsters got the children to scream. That's how they took the energy, and the closer they get to the end, the bigger the scream they need. But when you look at it the other way, and the split of consciousness, at the end of Monsters Inc. they were getting the children to laugh, and they went from the 3D to the 5D in Monsters Inc. because laughter is 5D. So with that, thank you very much, guys, because I'll babble on all day on this one, so I can't stop it now. So love, light and blessings, everybody. Thank you very much. Please like, share and subscribe. I really do appreciate your support and your lovely comments. Thank you very much. Blessings, everybody. Bye.